2024. Just to inform everybody present that this meeting is being recorded and will be placed on YouTube, which has become policy since September. So if we just head on to the agenda, are there any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair. Apologies received from Councillor Muggle.
Councillor Russell.
Are there any substitute committee members?
None, Chair.
No. Okay. To receive any declarations of interest under the members' code of conduct? Anyone?
Chair.
No. Obviously, this is a public forum. There's no members of the public in here, so there'll be nobody who wants to speak from the public unless people turn up the meeting. They can turn up at any point during the meeting.
Just do the minutes. Number 4.
Oh, sorry, yes. Number 4 first. To confirm and sign the minutes of the meeting held on 20th July 2024 is a correct record.
I had one question about that. It's on page 11, item I at the bottom, about the measures needed to avoid bankruptcy. I think I remember they said July. I think they said 1 year for bankruptcy was possibility, but inevitability.
Yeah.
Can you remember them saying that? I don't think they said by the end of the financial year, 25-26. I think it was 1 year. 1 year's time. So I take to be by July 25, we'll be faced bankruptcy if it doesn't change.
Yes, that would have been what I would have
Yeah, I thought it was 1 year.
When we had previous conversations with Ian Newman.
Whereas this seems to suggest 2 years.
That we would be looking at bankruptcy within the financial year of 24, 25.
No.
It said 1 year, I think.
I think if I can just explain, Chair, thank you. So absolutely, the council's reserves are very, very low, but we are putting in lots of mitigating actions. So as you'll see, the financial performance is better. So we are replenishing our reserves and underspending. However, if there was to be something catastrophic or there was, say, something major in say social care or children's social care, then obviously it's really important that we let members know.
I understand that, but at the meeting, it's just going through the minutes. At the meeting, it was said there was 1 year.
Right, that would have been said by Mr Newman.
He
but
was, yeah.
Yeah, so if that's what's said, but obviously we're doing everything we can.
I understand. It's just
You know, yeah.
what he said, Mr. Newman, was
Of course.
1 year.
So if we can just look into that and get that
Yeah.
corrected and get some details on that. Great. Any other issues with the minutes from anyone? No. Again, as I've already covered, this is a public forum. There are no members of the public here. For agenda number 5, people might turn up at some point and would be welcome to get involved. At the end, I'll speak to them again. Then we'll get to agenda item number 6, Fit for the Future programme update, and that'll be from Belvinda.
It will. You able to share? Yeah. That's good. If you could go to the next slide. So today I'm going to summarise and one thing I will say is things like the LGA and the SIPA findings. I will introduce them today, but as we go into the next set of scrutiny committee, the next one of this, you will see the integrated improvement plan that will include the detailed findings. But we did say that we would give an update on both these reports, so that's what I'm going to do today. If you pass that to me, I'll turn it aside. Sorry, Karen. It's probably better save me disturbing you. Sorry. So one of the things that we focused on very heavily over the last 15 months is the council's budget position. We've talked about savings, the challenges, the risk of 114, etc. But I thought it was really useful that as members, you could see the achievements we've made to date and how we have warded off the section 114. So you'll know that last October, we put in spending controls. Now, since the launch of vacancy savings during the first phase, and we're on to phase 2 now. So in phase 1, between October, end of October, it's the 25th of October, if I remember the cabinet meeting, to the end of March, we delivered £4.5 million worth of staffing savings and contract savings during that time. Since April this year, and why that's important is we, at the end of March, we looked at the spending controls criteria and we tightened it. So then we had spending controls phase 2 from April. And since then, we've had 110 recruitment submissions. So what does that mean? So these are, so at the moment, we have a vacancy freeze on as a council. But if a director says, actually, I must fill this role because of statutory needs, i.e. we could be prosecuted if we don't deliver that function, or it brings in income, etc., then they go to the spending controls group. So we received 110 exceptions by directors since between April and August, and of those 100 were approved. Now that feels like a lot, but what that does tell me is actually directors are only bringing those jobs to us that absolutely the council needs to fill. And the 10 that weren't approved so far this year, we've made £238,000 savings. We had 35 contract submissions. Again, these have been through all the internal processes, procurement advisory group, director sign off. We approved 33, valued at 66.7 million, but 2 were not approved, saving the council 1.3 million. So the spend controls has a really good additional check and challenge where we look at it through a lens of, actually, can the council afford to do this? We are in hard times and we want to make a saving. So that was a saving that we made. And then as part of the phase 2, we're doing random sampling of spend through purchase cards, invoice transactions, etc. So where, for example, directors who are responsible for delivering spending controls, perhaps they had agreed spend that wasn't valid. So of the 54 that were sampled, 9 were not valid. Sorry, of the numbers reviewed, 54 were valid, which meant they were in line with spending controls, but 9 weren't. They were very low value ones, the 9. But what it has done is given us the ability to go back to those managers and remind them of the criteria. So in terms of spending controls phase 3, we are now looking at the spending controls group, also looking at non-pay spend. So it is about, as a council, are we doing everything we can to curtail our spending in the areas where, you know, it's not going to affect vulnerable people. We're not going to be taken to court over it. And there's different ways of doing things. So we are looking at every avenue. So your council members will remember that we had a 3-year council plan. We stood that down. That was approved by council and replaced it with a 1-year focus plan that had a reduced basket of corporate KPIs and smart objectives. Now, why did we do that? Because 1, we wanted to focus on financial sustainability, and 2, we wanted to have a much smaller focus plan, which made sure that we increased our grip and control across the board. Now, there is a lot to do, but I'd like to, give assurance to members that we are on the journey and things are changing. For example, we're going through Star Chambers, which I'll come through in a little bit. But what the council plan now is that every month, every week, we meet as a corporate management team, and every month we see performance against our key performance indicators. They go to Cabinet Policy Group every month, so the Cabinet can see them. So the reason that's important is, have we got a common understanding of the priorities? Are we driving performance better than we have ever before? Is there improved member understanding? And can we make further improvements to our key performance indicators so that we underpin those by data quality? So, for example, attendance at training is another one that we're looking at bringing in. So what we also then did was look at the way that we do appraisals, because we wanted to refine that. And you can see that 86% of managers now have smart objectives, and they've given those 3 stars and above. So we asked managers to rank the new appraisal system. And the aim is that I'm an individual, my objectives should link right back to the council plan. And is there that golden thread that's emerging? So we're tightening up, we're smartening the way we do things, and we're making people more accountable for their own delivery. to use the space.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. The other thing we undertook, and this started at the beginning of April, was a series of functional reviews. So if you imagine the council, everything we do is a function, whether it's a function of waste and recycling, whether it's the function of adult social care, children's services, homeschool transport, it's a function. So the first phase of functional reviews were very much pilot. It was a very different way as a council that we were looking at the way we could drive out efficiencies. And we picked a few. We didn't pick a huge number because we wanted to get our methodology right before we went into some of the bigger areas like waste, for example. So we reviewed the borough halls and Bistro, where it went through a functional review. And as members will know, Brooks Bar has been closed, did make some substantial losses, and we are now looking at Stourbridge and Helzo in town halls with a view to looking at alternative providers who will lead to a zero cost to the council. At the moment, both of those have quite a significant subsidy. We reviewed our customer contact centres, and we're closing down the one in Dudley, which if you look at it through the lens of a resident, that's the furthest that some of our residents have to travel in to get face to face. So we're replacing that in the libraries. We're training up the library staff. The library staff have received it really positively because footfall into libraries is actually falling. So they want to be able to offer more services. Viability continues. So the reality is, as digital is coming in and people are using more Kindles and things, the use of libraries is naturally decreasing by our residents. So what this has done, it's given us the ability to put face-to-face customer services into libraries closer to where people live and better use of the libraries. We also want to extend the use of libraries as other multi-agency hubs because we know that residents and members do view them as a really strong community asset, but we cannot underestimate that footfall is falling. And that is something that GLL are quite worried about. So they're keen to work with us to see how we can make them more usable spaces. But what that means for the council is we can close buildings and make a saving and deliver a better customer service. So that's good. The leisure centres, again, quite a big subsidy the council pays every year, you know, on them. So we've got 3 leisure centres, Crystal in Stourbridge, Helzo in and Duncan Edwards in Dudley. All 3 of them make a loss. All 3 of them are heavily subsidised, but again, very valued by those who use them. So we are now out to tender 2 providers to see if there's somebody who would wish to take over the running of our leisure centres. So why would a loss-making provision be interesting to the private sector? Because actually that's their business. You know, they know they're very good at marketing, they're very good at getting new subscribers in, they're very good at targeting activity, etc. I'm pleased to say that we have had a good response to the tender, and so far the people that the organisations that we've shortlisted are the sort of national people that you would expect to see in this game. So that's positive. What that means is the council can still provide the sort of leisure provision that it wants, but hopefully it's a much more cost-effective basis. Off-street parking, fees and charges, so reduction of the 2-hour free period and new enforcement charges that will start from next week. That's going to give us an overall saving of just under £2 million. You know, the council did have 2 hours parking charges, then it brought the 2 hours free. Unfortunately, you know, with the council's financial position, we've got to look at everything. So that is coming into place. We reviewed the environmental health function. We have an environmental health function in housing and we have a corporate one. That's been merged now. And a review of its structure and job roles is underway, but it did deliver £250,000 worth of savings. Telecare, this is a service that vulnerable people have in their homes, alarms, etc. The pendants that they wear. We have reviewed that, so you know we provide it to housing who pay for that service, but we did, you know, we charge private tenants, but now we are also looking at charging our council tenants who are through a means tested process. So that review has been done, and then finally the review of CAPA that was undertaken, which is about you know, changing the way we use digital better, the way that we you know, manage events, etc., the way that we, you know, deliver things that make a loss and how we can review those changes to the way the mayoral support works, etc., with a view to delivering savings. Oh, sorry, let me just go back up a stage. So of those reviews, even though they were a what I would call a pilot of a snapshot of a few areas that the council delivers. Bearing in mind, we have a net budget of 320 million. That was a pilot phase, but that will generate by 26-27 budget an ongoing saving of £5.6 million. So that is well worth doing. Now, some of those savings are coming in year this year, some will be fully realised next year, etc. But I wanted to make it smart and say, when will you see the full effect of those? Now, we're just about to embark on phase 2 of functional reviews, and I will explain how they're going to be decided.
Could I just ask a quick question on this? The expected savings, is that a cautious scenario? Because with most of those, we don't know for sure what the savings is going to be.
It's what I would call not cautious but realistic. So what we are trying to be is more, so using evidence to say, if we say we're going to save £10, what is that based on? In the past, there have been assumptions made, so we're moving very much away from assumptions to evidence-based data. So yes, some of our figures are more conservative, because what I'd rather do is under-promise and over-deliver. But we've worked through those very carefully in terms of before we offer the look of savings as being deliverable.
In regard to telecare there, obviously that's not a free at the point of use, is it?
Yeah.
And the charges, I believe, are £30 to fit plus that if you haven't got a blue card, £21.30 per month. If we're going to roll that out to council house residents, is that going to be at that same charge, or will it be a reduced
It's
charge?
already available to council house tenants who meet the need.
Yeah, but the cost, I think you mentioned the costs, and you said it to the private use, did you not?
Yes, so private sector tenants were able to access it as a fee pay, yes.
Yes.
But
When you roll it out more,
yes,
is that going to be the same for
yes.
same costs?
So it will, so private sector tenants have historically always paid for telecare if they need it in their homes. In housing, the HRA picked it up, but what we've done now is also looked at those tenants that as if you were means testing them, could afford it, then they will pay a proportion of that as well. But if you roll it out wider to private sector tenants, then yes, they would pay.
So if we look at going back to what was said over there, if the savings, so if we look at Borough Halls and Bistro, for instance, savings by 2026-27 would be 410k.
Yes.
Are we just presuming that the loss was 205k per year to get to that figure?
Yes, about £250,000 a year that we made a loss on the Borough Halls.
So what is the plan with the Bistro? Has that gone out to tender? Is that?
So the bistro, we've closed it, but
Yeah.
the bar is still open on the nights when Dudley Town Hall has got a performance. Because the Tommy Munden bar can't cope with the capacity, so the overflow will go into the bistro bar. That's still open. The bistro is still kitted out, and we are now out to a provider for the lease of the bistro, and then a private.
So if we look at the figures of that, where you're saying it's lost £250,000 a year, and we're at 410, are we presuming that the bar staying open just for the town hall use is going to generate 90 grand income?
Yeah, so this will be, so both Stourbridge and Halesowen Town Hall also cost us money. They have a subsidy every year.
Yeah.
So this looks at removing that subsidy by somebody else running that for us. So they basically run it and the council doesn't subsidise it.
Yeah.
So the lease for the bistro, when someone else takes it over, the lease is for, and Helen's here, she'll correct me if I'm wrong. The lease for the bistro also includes the Tommy Munden bar and the bar. So whoever takes it over, they will not only run the bistro at no cost to the council, but they will also run both bars as well. Okay.
Yeah. And so just going back on that, with the town halls, the self with because it's Stourbridge and Halesowen that would
Yes.
go for tender. Do we know if there's been much interest in them? Because what we're hearing is actually there's not very much interest in them because they're the quieter ones of the town halls. And we were told that, I think, that Dudley Town Hall itself was actually going to stay within complete control of the council, because that was.
So we have 4 borough halls, if you include Briley Hill, even though that's run by the. If you take the geography of our borough and the time taken to travel, 4 borough halls is really difficult to sustain if you're looking at commercial acts, because a commercial act wouldn't come to Dudley and then on to Stourbridge, because it's not got, we haven't got the population to serve it, because people will travel, and plus we've got Wolverhampton. But so Stourbridge and Halesowen, we have offered them out for a provider to run them, who may do different things with them as well as running them as a borough hall. We expect that they may say they need some support to begin with, etc. But Dudley Town Hall, the council is still subsidising that, because they do feel that one borough hall in the town of Dudley, linked to the bistro and the food and beverage offering social side we want to increase, is still required to be kept. So Helen, do you want to just articulate that a bit better than I did just now?
Well, one of the things I would cover is we have had so far 15 expressions of interest. So that has closed that initial period of submitting.
Across them all, so everyone's
Across them all. And that breaks down to, if I remember right, 6 that are interested in Stourbridge, 2 that are interested in Halesowen, 6 organisations that are interested in Stourbridge and Halesowen, and 1 who didn't declare. We have a Halesowen address. So we're clarifying that with them, but I would assume you could probably lump that in with Halesowen. And they are a mix of different types of organisations, including some big names. So we should hopefully, out of that, we'll find some viable potential operators for potentially both of them. And it may be different operators for each, or it might be the same operator, but we have a good number. So the next stage is the team will meet with all of those potential providers, show them around, answer any questions that they have. Those that remain interested after that will be given the opportunity to put in a full business case by sort of the end of November, and then December, January time, we should be able to come towards a decision for council to make as to the future of what those halls and what they look like. Dudley has had some investment in it. We're partway through an investment programme that's improved lighting, and it will improve the rigging. It's the biggest of our halls. You can get nearly 1,000 people in it. And because of that improvement, we can now encourage and have acts come that we couldn't before, because the sound system, for example, is a lot better. We're starting to see that interest come forward. There's a very long time lag of 6 to 12 months between having the facility and the interest and actually getting a booking, because there's a long lead in time. So that is not yet fully showing in the finances or in what is currently appearing there as an act, but that is improving. So what we've suggested is that we as a council retain that one, try to maximise on the investment. Some of the shows that might have been at Halesowen and Stourbridge might then come to Dudley, not all, because they provide a very different offer and attract a different customer, but some will. And we will monitor really closely the performance of that hall and see how it does. Hopefully by the end of the year, then it's starting to turn its fortunes around and we're starting to reduce or remove that subsidy. If not, then obviously we will regularly report back to council and ultimately different decisions may be made. But the intention at the moment is to put all our resources and all our effort behind Dudley Town Hall.
And so that would, in essence, just be retaining ticket sales if the bars are leased out to private vendors and companies.
Yes, in essence. And the halls get their income from two ways. So we have what we call general hires. So if I was to rent it out for a birthday party, or we were to have a meeting in there, whatever, there's a higher income. And then there's the events income. So if you've got something like Jimmy Carr come, what happens is we then share on an agreed proportionate basis the ticket profit from the ticket sales. So somebody big like Jimmy Carr would be 80-20, we get 20% of the profit from the ticket sales. So we get income in a number of different ways from the halls, but it would be separate to the bar.
So Councillor Kesey's asked a question about how Dudley Town Hall is doing. And Councillor Kesey, the answer is we are still subsidising it because the investment is still ongoing. But if the subsidy is still in place, then it's in line with the business plan for the final bits of the capital programme to be done, so that investment could be realised.
So just finally from me, and then I'll see if anybody else got any questions. I know we were saying these figures were quite conservative. In reality, are they going to be overshooting quite a lot? Because I presume for some of them, it's just going to be a lower level of subsidy that is put into the building. So, for instance, if somebody comes in for, and this is a figure that ain't true, if we say Halesowen was costing 200 grand a year to keep running, and people were coming in saying, well, we still need our subsidy, is the plan to still put some form of subsidy in to Halesowen Town?
So that will be part of the evaluation when we get their business plans. So, for example, when Briley Hill went over to the CDS, there was a few years where the council did subsidise it, before it became self-financing. However, the council's financial position now is so significantly different. We would need to see their business plan, so that's really difficult to answer.
Okay.
So if I give you an example, the leisure centres, I think if I'm right, Helen, the net subsidy, the overall subsidy is just over £3 million a year. So we know that initially, our estimates that it will make a saving on that of 1.164 million, because as those operators increase the subscriptions and increase their market share, then that should reduce. But those are the estimates we're putting in at the moment, so that we're able to make sure that we're putting in estimates that we can stand by.
So the plan for that is still a £1.9 million subsidy to leisure centres.
That's what's at the moment estimated, because what we put in is something that until we get the bidders in and we see what their reviews are. We had a shadow bid done, that was by a specialist leisure provider, and they looked at the leisure centres. They looked at all three, for example, Crystal, because Crystal's got a lot of capital maintenance it needs. So their estimate was that this would be the level of subsidy still required. But please remember, that's a shadow bid.
Yeah.
And that was not a bidder that was bidding for this. We've now had, large scale bidders, so they may have a different business plan. So some of these are assumptions at the moment based on a shadow bid.
Has anybody else got questions? Yeah.
Oh, got a question on the leisure centre. So it says there financials based on Crystal being mothballed. So the bids that have been invited, are the bidders being invited to potentially have all three open? Potentially.
They've been asked to bid for Helzo, Duncan Edwards and the Dell, which is in the mix as well, and with the option of Crystal. So that isn't in there. So it's not, but and the reason we say that is because Crystal's got such a big maintenance receipt against it. New roof, the pole does need work, etc. It is about us being realistic to members about, a provider. What we were concerned about, the shadow bid confirmed this, that if we had insisted on all four, it was unlikely that anyone would have come forward. So we're hedging our bets, and then the decision on Crystal will be made by members.
So about the Crystal again, obviously Stourbridge are going to lose out massively there, and the people of Stourbridge.
Yeah.
How is the Crystal been allowed to get in that state that it needs this much work doing to it? Because I mean that's the only swimming baths that I know within miles of anywhere near Stourbridge. The nearest one's Aidenhill, which is practically Alzoe. And the children of people of Alzoe, I mean, I learned to swim in Stourbridge, and we haven't got enough children that swim in and dives and stuff can be
Let me
at risk.
clarify, and apologies, the word mothball is wrong here, so I will correct that in the version that's published. The leisure centre providers have the option to go for Crystal. Now, they may say, actually, with investment, we can make this work. That because, as you say, you've got a target market for swimming, and the swimming part of Crystal is the most popular.
Yeah.
But if, for example, the leisure centre providers say, we can make Helzo, Dell and Duncan Edwards work, then the council will decide what it does about Crystal. This is not a presumption that it will close. There's things like community trusts. There's other things that the council can do, but we want to test this and we want to stress test this on all four and then see what the future of Crystal is. But no decision has been made.
I have some real concerns about losing that leisure centre to Stourbridge.
I'm fully aware of that, and I understand how important it is for members. So I want to, it's members who will make that decision.
Okay, thank
It
you.
just looks a little bit fatalistic, doesn't it?
Yeah,
I think we need to.
First thing we saw.
So Karen, I think if we're publishing this online, we just need to remember. So I will, because this has been recorded, I will correct that and say, and it should have said, and the future of Crystal will be reviewed.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're happy with that, yeah?
Yeah, I'm happy with that, yeah.
Yeah, apologies.
Is there any other questions on this section, or let Calvin continue? Oh, yeah, continue.
Some question, but I'll probably ask.
Wait till the end.
Okay, so this is just to show you where we are on the medium-term financial strategy. In terms of our savings, to date, we have delivered 9.46 million of the savings that we'll put in the MTFS. We're forecasting to overachieve by £810,000 in one area. We're progressing 2.1 million of savings, and 3.8 are at risk, and that's primarily due to adult social care continuing healthcare funding that is due to us from the NHS that is under review at the moment. Now, that's at risk. We're still working on that, and we have got some key updates next week. So I don't want members to think that we've assumed that's not happening, but it would be wrong of me not to report that that is at risk. So you can see we're on track, and it's October. Well, we are in September, we're nearly October. We're on 70% so far. Assurance of 82 at this point. The 3.8 is the CHC, and we are working very hard with the NHS to get that money delivered to the council. Yes? Okay, thank you.
Question. Jason, thanks.
Sorry, yeah.
I would appreciate it if these slides had appeared in here. Do you know what I mean? So
So if you recall, and I did this at agenda briefing and I mentioned it at the last select committee, because we wanted to give you the most up-to-date position. On this occasion, I did send them out later, but next time they will be. And I'll give an update of any material changes at the meeting.
Smashing, because I did notice, like from the last meeting we had to this meeting, they're almost like two different things. Do you know what I mean? There's no lead, and in particular on this, I mean, the one that stands out is adult social care delivery at P2 percentage is 21%.
Yeah, and that's continuing healthcare again.
I realise that, but it'd be nice to be able to see it
Yeah.
in this format,
Yes.
month in, month out, so we can actually make an assessment.
So at the next.
Yeah, so just to confirm on that we did have a pre-agenda meeting, and the instruction to Balvinder was, let's have the most up-to-date. So we wouldn't have had time to implement it.
Response to that. What you're seeing last time is the monthly financial report. What I'm doing is an achievement, so they're going to be presented differently. But at the next select committee, you will have the first 6 months of council financial performance in that format, so you can compare.
Thank you.
So councillors will remember that council approved the new operating model blueprint, which very much puts our communities at the focus of everything we want to do. So what does that actually mean in practice? That means that we will be starting work on a 10-year vision for the borough, starting with working with our members, because you are the community representatives, and community groups about, you know, what are the things that we need to do over the next 10 years that are important to our residents. So this is, I suppose, our way of saying that at the moment, everything is about financial sustainability, delivering, you know, improved reserve levels, etc. But I want us to see a way out of that and start to look at, well, what's the next 10-year vision? You know, what are the things we're going to deliver to our communities? What are the things we're going to commission? What are the things we're going to remain in-house? What's most important to our communities, not just across the borough, but broken down by neighbourhoods, because as you know, the needs in different neighbourhoods are different. So we want to do that piece of work with communities, so we really understand from the grassroots what is important, and that visioning work will start. And then from there, the rest of the operating model is starting to be built out. So Helen's going to do you an update on the governance today, work stream that we're doing, and we've got a lot more to do on that. The core functions, which is effectively, if I can tell you, that's the way that we as a business operate. So, you know, how do we deliver HR? How do we deliver finance, legal, etc. Admin, how best do we use technology? All those core functions, we are starting that work, and that phase of work starts in early October. It's going to last 15 weeks, and the idea is that we make a 15% saving on the cost of our core functions as a total. So we're starting that, and then we've got strategic leadership, which is about the way we're organised at a senior level, and that work is also ongoing. And then how do we develop operational managers so they're more cross-functional rather than, you know, we have been challenged by LGA and CIPRA being too siloed, so becoming that one council. So I just wanted to show that is an achievement, because the council's not had an operating model before, but now we have a blueprint that we're working to. And as I say, we're well onto the phases of this. But right at the centre of this, the most important aspect of the communities that we serve. So more detail at the next select committee about how that's shaping up and how things are changing to deliver this new operating model. So now I'm going to just focus on the corporate peer review challenge. So we had our peer review challenge this time last September, for those of you who were here then. The LGA have come back, and they came back in summer to see our progress. So what they said to us was that given the work that they had observed and where we are, this council does not need to go into a section 114 if we make the decisions that are necessary. We've got plenty of opportunities. They were pleased to see the movement on things like parking. They were pleased to see the work that's being planned on things like waste and the review of libraries, etc. So there is opportunities for us. They were pleased to see that we started to look at our operating model. So they do see opportunities for us as an organisation to make the decisions to mitigate a 114. And when I get to SIPA, they will be saying the same.
Can you just quickly, just because it is a public, it will be viewed by the public, can you just quickly explain for members of the public what section 114 is?
Of course, yes. So section 114 notice is something that normally the council will issue. So Birmingham City Council is the best example. They will issue that when they feel that they can no longer settle their bills. That's probably the easiest way. So for example, if the demand on our functions outweighed the budget that we had available and we had replenished our reserves, we had depleted our reserves. So what does that mean? So if you assume a reserve is like a savings account, which you have, so councils will have reserves for insurance. They'll have reserves for if there's a major civil contingency where the borough needs to spend significantly more amounts of money in a short space of time. Well, we as a council have very low levels of reserves. We have just over, I think it's 13 million at the moment of earmarked and general reserves. So that's our savings account. But so we would declare a 114 if all those reserves were used up and we could no longer settle, say the bills for our statutory services, etc. And that's when Birmingham declared. So Birmingham had two big major issues: the equal pay claims that were historic and long-standing, and an IT system which had gone significantly over budget. Both of those put together gave them, I think, just over £800 million worth of costs that they did not have the ability to pay for. So they declared a section 114. That is done by the 151 officer. That's the only role that could do this in conjunction with the chief executive. And what that meant is that the government sent in commissioners who intervened. They were put under strict spending controls. And then effectively, the decision making was taken out of the hands of the members. So local democracy is removed and commissioners come in and they very much direct the way the council will spend its money and what support it will get. But Birmingham's savings are significantly ramped up. So they are closing, a lot of facilities that they would not have closed on to that. So it is something that we are doing everything we can to avoid. The peer challenge said that they could see an improvement in member-member relationships, but the work between members and officers does require further work, and we accept that and we want to do more. So what does that mean? So are we as members and officers seen as that single team working together to support the priorities of the organisation? And do members and officers have that common understanding of the key issues? So whilst relationships at a personal level are really good and do work well, and this sort of environment's really good for check and challenge, I think just that common understanding of where the key decisions and key priorities are is really important. So further work is being done on that, as well as the governance work that Helen's going to summarise in terms of, are decisions being made at the right level? Are they evidence-based? Do they show need, etc., etc.? And what are the lessons that we're learning from some of the past decisions that we're doing? Member officer relationships is something we should continuously work at because the leadership is so important.
So in terms of, the peer review itself was 2023?
2020, yeah,
2023. So at what date is the progress review from?
July 24. Okay. The thing they did say is that we need to up our pace to make sure that to avoid that financial challenge that we face in terms of finding more front loading of savings, more transformational programs that will give us ongoing sustainability. And that vision for the future, which I said as part of our operating model, needs to be put in place because we need to be not only looking at financial sustainability, but what kind of council do we want to be over the next 10 years? What's important to our residents, and do we understand that? So they felt really pace and, progressing the savings as a matter of urgency jointly between members and officers is the single biggest issue we need to do. Now, I'll come to what we're doing to address that in a minute. So then we've had the SIPFA findings now, they're still in draft. It was a detailed piece of work that SIPFA did for us. So why SIPFA? So SIPFA are the body that the government, so through MHLG, they are the advisory body that tell them about, our councils doing everything they can to improve their finances, improve their relationships, focus on their priorities, etc. So we had SIPFA come in to give us their review of where are the key areas. So they made recommendations around governance, about building stronger relationships and more rigor in decision making. So that evidence base, that evidence of need, and that tracking of decisions to say, are they really delivering on what we set out to do? So, for example, Crystal was mentioned earlier. What SIPFA would look at as well. Any decisions made on anything. What were the considerations that members took on board to review that? So and local need is important, as is facilities, etc. But you've also got to balance that in within the financial envelope the council has to work in. They talked about our financial resilience, which echoed a lot of what the peer review had said about the need to make savings in the context of a council-wide strategy. But they also made specific recommendations about improvements to culture. So that silo working I talked about improving our processes and overall the scrutiny of savings. So the scrutiny process and that improving. So, this select committee and the work that you're doing, are we going far enough with the savings? Are you getting assurance that the achievements that you're seeing are faster? And as this work of the scrutiny committee gets into it, you'll be able to check and challenge more at the next committee when we provide the integrated improvement plan. They made specific recommendations around adult social care, children's and public health. Directors have had sight of those, and we are working on those in terms of how they are built into the overall savings plans. They also made specific recommendations about things like reviewing our waste and recycling. So again, we're looking at those so members can make those decisions. And they have made specific recommendations about improving financial management. So, are budget managers fully in control of their budgets? Are they fully trained? Are we managing risk well? Is our MTFS process as rigorous as it can be? Sorry, for those watching, MTFS is our medium-term financial strategy. Is it as rigorous as it can be? Is it considering all the areas? So are we looking at everything that we possibly can? They said that we could look at improving our approach to risk management and our overall management of projects, which, given as we move into more transformational use of ICT and AI, that skill is going to be ever more important. So again, lots of themes coming out, which we are putting into a single improvement plan. So what's our response to both LGA and SIPFA? So we are holding at the moment, and in fact we had adult social care today, we are holding what we call star chambers. So that's every director and their heads of service coming to talk about their functions and how they work across the council. What are the opportunities for them to use technology more? What are their opportunities to make savings? What are their pressures, etc. And to support that, we've brought in what I would describe as two sector specialists. Kim Bromley-Derry, who's come in as a strategic advisor. So Kim's background is he's been a director of children's services. He's worked in adult social care. He's been a chief exec in some large local authorities, and he's now a commissioner. So when I talked earlier about Birmingham being in section 114, they have commissioners in. So Kim is very much is very well placed to advise us through a commissioner's lens. What will some of our decision making be? How would they view that? So what we've done with SIPFA and bringing in Kim is to try and be on the front foot and say, look, you know, rather than go, you know, be at risk of intervention, let's bring in a commissioner. Let's get SIPRA in, who MHLG listened to, so they can be assured that we are on the right track and keep a check and challenge on us. So Kim's joined us and he's part of the Star Chambers. And then we've got a gentleman called Brendan Arnold, who's come in as our Programme Director for Financial Sustainability. Brendan's background is that he has, he's regularly sent in by MHLG into councils who have got financial sustainability issues. So for example, he was at Woking, and Woking were, you know, in the national press for being in section 114. He was at Wirral when they had their financial problems. And most recently, he's been at Somerset, where he validated their overall £90 million worth of savings. So he's very experienced in this, and he's providing a lot of support to the Star Chambers in terms of that financial check and challenge. So each director comes in, they set out their review of savings and their transformation programmes. To date, if I can tell you, we've got over 170 actions coming out of those Star Chambers. Very much that will be progressed as part of the medium-term financial budget and longer-term transformational programmes. So when I talk about longer-term transformation, I'm talking about over the next 2 to 3 years, because that's what's going to drive our real sustainability. We've got lots of lines of inquiries about savings, improved value for money and management practice coming out of those. All Star Chambers will be completed by end of play tomorrow. Adult social care that happened today, there is half of that to be done, but that'll be done next week. But in the main, all directors will have had a Star Chamber by the 1st of October, and we only started those 3 weeks ago, so we've done them at pace. We will review those actions and we will then move to phase 2 of the Star Chambers to really hone down what are the actions, what are the savings, so that when we bring you the budget proposals, you can see the results of that work. We're also having some key pieces of work around the corporate management team workshops, so that we work as a single team and that we up our pace in terms of completing actions. And as I say, everything will be added into our MTFS process, so that when it comes back through the scrutiny process, you can see what that's resulted in terms of savings. The other thing that we've responded to is the movement to a single integrated improvement plan for the council. So that is going to take on board all the LGA and SIPRA recommendations, all the outcomes of the Star Chambers, all outstanding internal audit actions, because I'm very keen that we have a better grip on internal audit actions. We're having workshops with all heads of service and directors, and we are bringing in external specialist resource, which is Kim and Brendan, to work with Brexit's the corporate management team to build the detail of that plan. So our improvement programme will continue, but at the next select committee, you will see the shape of what is going to be a much more detailed integration plan than this council's ever had before. And the Star Chambers will determine what are the phase 2 functional reviews that I spoke about earlier. Why? Because they will determine the big ones. So where are the ones where most of the savings can be delivered? So the plan will be aligned to this budget setting process. So you will approve that in January. It'll go to cabinet and then on to council for approval, so that we've got full transparency of what we're doing. The plan is going to be built on the National Best Value Framework. I won't dwell on that today because you'll see more of that when we bring you the plan. But that will cover leadership, governance, culture, use of resources, service delivery, partnerships and community engagement, and continuous improvement. That is something that's recognised by the government. It's something that's recognised by SIPRA. So we thought we'd use a tried and trusted framework to build our improvement plan, which we can then gain assurance. Give assurance to those external bodies that are keen to understand what we're doing. And that's my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Just want to open it up to the floor. Anybody got any questions to the ones that we asked?
Okay, thank you, Chair. I mean, I've got a few questions. I mean, if anyone else wants to jump in, then let me know. Firstly, I think to say some of this, which you have shared, is as a result of the council's financial position. And as I said at the cabinet meeting last night, 120 or 100 or over 120 million pound was cut or taken away from Dudley's funding. So that's one of the reasons why council is where it is. And obviously notwithstanding the pressures, social services and children's services, which have been again kind of underfunded over the time. Now, the first part of your presentation, you talked about functional reviews. Is that something which is relatively new since the council's been in the financial mess, that these have started to take place, or have they been happening for a long time?
I would say formally, when directors have restructured, they would have done a form of a functional review when they restructured. But since last year, when we started to look at the Fit for the Future piece of programme, that was a specific focus. So we focused on functional reviews more than we've ever done before. So I would say, if you're asking the question, Councillor Ali, have they really started in anger from last year? The answer is yes.
Yeah. Because I think, I mean, if these functional reviews had been embedded and had been done over time, then we wouldn't be in this position, because some of the problems in terms of leisure centres and others we have is those issues should have been identified and highlighted time ago and actions put in place to prevent the council, the overall council's position, but also in terms of saving all those services. And, you know, I think they need to be embedded into the organisation, and these reviews need to be done on a frequent basis.
Yes.
In terms of the leisure centres, you know, making a loss, the interesting question is, why are they making a loss? I know you've said, Mark, you know, other private sector do marketing and targeting. Each of our leisure centres have staff attached to them. So what has gone wrong? Why, you know, I mean, private sector more and more are opening, and in terms of the council, the 2 or 3 it's got, we're not able to manage those successfully.
So it's quite complex, and this is not unique to Dudley. So local authorities who traditionally run leisure centres do tend to make a loss. One, because the local authority terms and conditions, you know, our staffing conditions. If you look at, for example, Nuffield Health, where I'm at, their staff terms and conditions, they're on 7-day working weeks, etc. Those conditions are very, very different to, now I'm not saying that's what will happen to our staff, because there'll be TUPE arrangements, etc. in the event they do, but they have much more leaner ways of working because they are private sector as opposed to, you know, public sector. That's one aspect. The second aspect is there is something about commercial where if you are a subject matter expert, that you will deliver that. You know, we are public servants, we deliver public services. You know, local authority leisure centres are normally better than private sector, because if you take our pools are likely to be great for learning to swim. They're great for people who are true swimmers. They're not sort of hotel type you know, pools that are smaller or more towards the leisure centres. You know, local authorities are more likely to run leisure centres with pools. Pools are very expensive to run. So these sort of things historically have built up the overspend. That doesn't mean to say that local authorities run them badly, but we have wider constraints. Sector can work differently is what I would say.
I think, again, I mean, it adds to the point I made earlier on. If, you know, the losses are identified earlier on and then putting some actions in place to mitigate those, rather than letting them go to a point of no return. And that's what's kind of happened now.
So if I could just come back, I don't think we're at the point of no return. I think we're looking at what is the future model, because the council wishes to retain its leisure centres. I mean, you know, the council has over the years made choices like free swimming for school-age children. All those sorts of things do come at a cost. So, you know, there's the financial value, but there's also the social value. And, you know, councils consider both, because, you know, as community leaders, you're also here to, so, you know, we don't want to lose any of that with the future of our leisure centres. You know, we've gone out to the market to see, you know, the ongoing viability of them, hopefully to preserve them.
Just on that, Stourbridge Baths, and you say that, example, Stourbridge Baths or the leisure centre was shut on a bank holiday. I find that unbelievable. That it wasn't open and functioning and bringing in money on that day. And also, a lot of these things with Stourbridge Baths were highlighted a decade ago. And there was a plan then to build new baths down by McDonald's sort of area and close. So these alarms were ringing.
They absolutely were, councillor, and I don't talk about the bank holiday, but the capital programme that was associated next to, in relation to Crystal Leisure Centre, whether it was a rebuild or a refurbishment, it just didn't stack up from a value for money perspective. That would have added more to the council's debt. It would have added more financial pressure. So the idea, the aim of keeping Crystal going in as best it could was actually, even though with the subsidy it carries was considered was the most cost effective option. So it isn't that there haven't been opportunities to look at rebuilding or refurbishing. It's just the costs of it are so prohibitive because of the wet facilities.
I don't want to criticise you. I'm not convinced that's true. I think if we'd have bit the bullet in 2016, we may have been able to recoup those losses. But that's a personal belief. I'll bow to your better knowledge. But do you see where I'm coming from?
I absolutely do, and I understand how special leisure centres are to councillors across the country. It is a hard decision. But if we take Duncan Edwards, that again is running on a subsidy, and that's a brand new centre. It is, the nature of local authorities, this cost of swimming lessons, etc., all those sorts of things. And we offer, subsidies for people on, vulnerable people, etc. So all those things do add a social value, but they also come at a cost.
So just quickly on that, and I presume you won't have these figures to hand, so it's kind of a rhetorical question, but making a point. So if we look at the Duncan Edwards Leisure Centre, for instance, what would the subsidy be for that compared to when it was the old Dudley Leisure Centre? Or is there a saving?
I would have to provide those figures to you.
Because we've got a case study there where we can actually reference and say, well, actually, if Jason's point is right.
If it's okay, we'll come back with those figures and provide them not before the next select committee, so it can be on the action plan, yeah? Thank you. So if I've got this right, what you're looking at is that if we hadn't have, if we'd have kept the old, what has been the improvement since Duncan Edwards, new leisure centres opened. But do remember our leisure centre subscription is for all three leisure centres. So, our users can go to all three leisure centres, but
I presume that's been the case
it has,
for the duration.
Yeah, that's right, isn't it, Helen? Correct. Yeah. But certainly I understand what you're looking for, we'll provide that too.
So if I can carry on, when you carry out these functional reviews, how is the impact of some of the measures assessed and taken on board? And to give an example, for example, car parking charges. I attended a meeting with traders and businesses, and they were saying they hadn't been consulted. And there was a plea from them to maybe have a phased approach because of all the disruption and the works that are going on within the town centre. Rather than being hit straight away, can that be put back, 6 months or whatever? Metro is supposed to be coming online next year. So the business, they've already suffered, so they don't suffer on top of this.
So if I can explain, the removal of the 2 hour free in the car parks is what goes live from next week, along with improved enforcement. The on-street zoning, it will all be subject to public consultation. I think there has been a misunderstanding that the public consultation will be done for on-street parking, and that is all part of nationally set out legislation that says what you consult on, because there will be additional things such as, zoning, yellow lines, etc. All that work, disabled bays, it all features as part of this, and that will be consulted on. So I think that is the part that, the removal of the 2 hours was effectively a fees and charges review, but the elements that town centres are talking about on-street parking, that will be subject to reviews, and we have said that in the cabinet report. So
Yeah, I think it's important to take on board the feedback. Firstly, important to consult with the affected people, and then also to take on board some of the feedback you get, because like I said, it could have worked out better if there was a phased approach, supporting local businesses and traders. But some of these, I mean, comes to, in terms of the council, a failure in this kind of commercialization. The council has failed commercially. And is that because of we haven't got the right, expertise or staff or skill, to drive some of that forward? Or, have you not had a chance to look into that and see what is the fundamental reason? Some of the things the council has done commercially seems to have failed on everything. I mean, cafe, the Brooks Bar Bistro we've talked about. I mean, again, significant amount of money was spent on it before, taking the decision to close it.
Yeah, I mean, should public local authorities be running commercial functions is something we are.
No, but the thing is, it's no point making the decision, doing something first and then asking the question, should we be running it? That decision should be taken first. And I think there's an element missing around commercialization. If and this is around income generation as well. The council, I think, lacks, in my view, the skills and expertise around that. It's no good like afterwards saying, well, should we be running that? We should have done that before even opening it. Were we in a position to run it? If we weren't, then why take the decision rather than to invest all of that money and then 2 years down the line, we're then saying, well, we shouldn't have done it because.
No, apologies. I'm saying that what we are doing is learning the lessons from some of the ventures such as leisure sectors within the local authority environment, the social value. The subsidy then was considered at a time when the council reported as something that it wanted to do because it wanted to invest. The council's financial position is so significant a challenge now that we have to look at different ways of delivering things and also learn the lessons from the past where perhaps, we looked at things through different lenses rather than, the bistro was designed to bring footfall for food and beverage to increase that sort of hospitality quarter that's being developed. So it had all the right intentions, but we are learning the lessons and that has been subject to the task and finish group already.
Yeah, I think the lesson obviously there is partnerships before something is put into action kind of thing. Because the bistro bar itself is a good idea. It will support the town hall.
Yeah.
It should never have been left for the council to run. So it should have been a partnership with the private sector before it had even got off the ground.
Yeah, maybe a piece of work when time kind of allows on this commercialization element, compared with other local authorities, where they've kind of worked really well. What have they got in place, in terms of support and infrastructure, which has worked well for them, which we didn't have? Maybe a comparison of that would be really helpful at some times. And this is kind of, as the chair said, in terms of learning the lessons, it'd be really good. Just a couple of others, Chair. One, the member officer relationship, which is talked about. And, everyone's tarnished with the same paintbrush. And it's really important to, bottom that out. Where are the problems? Is it between the cabinet and officers, or is it individual members and officers? Because out there, when you say members and officer relationships, there's a problem. Everyone's looked at as, they can't work with the officers or something. So there needs to be some kind of distinction where the issue and problem is.
Yeah, and that is, as I said in my presentation, that is a piece of work that we are working on to improve that relationship. And not only one-to-one relationships, but also relationships where, as officers, we've got to recommend some challenging courses of action for members and all the support we can give you to help make those decisions.
Yeah, because it doesn't put members in good light. I think we need to bottom it out. If it is, for example, officers bringing along recommendations and, there's a disagreement between cabinet and officers, that's what needs to be put out in the public rather than saying, there's a total failure, which personally, I don't think there is as such, but you know, I stand to be corrected. I think it'd be helpful if you can share the recommendations which have been shared with the directors of public children's services, a kind of summary of what they've been asked by external advisors. Similarly, I was going to ask a question on the external advisors. You know the two specialists you have. How much are they being paid? How many days are they working per week? And I was going to ask the question about the outcomes, but you've said they've come out with 170 actions. So again, I think it'd be really good for us to have a summary of what those actions are. So if they can be brought here.
Yeah. And that will be part of the integrated improvement plan that I bring to you in the future. It's being developed now. So yes.
Yeah. So, and the other things, if you could share that in terms of how many days they're working, how much is being
I can
paid.
tell you how many days, but the other thing. So Kim Bromley's area average 2 days a week. He's an advisor. And then Brendan Arnold started 2 days a week, but now is full time. Up until probably the end of February, March time.
Full time in what capacity?
Program director for financial sustainability.
Okay. And then you can share with us how much they're being paid.
So that in terms of payments, they are part of a services contract where we bring in skills if needed. For example, if we needed skills on governance, for example, that Helen, she's coming to our presentation, might need some more skills, or we need different skills. So they're part of a services contract rather than they're in terms of they're not interims in that way. They're services that we've procured. But I'll share those details.
Thank you.
That's like they're short-term contracts then.
Services contracts. It's
Yeah.
really important that we make that distinction because that allows us to flex what skills and resources we bring in.
That's all.
Anybody else got anything they want to add, or should we go, Peter? Sorry.
I was at the end. Just a few questions about Brooks Bar to start with. The last time we met, that seemed to be up in the air. There'd been no decision made. You know, we were critical of it. Who made the decision to close that? Was it political, or was it the recommendation of the officers? Because you seem to be of the thought it could be kept going, the deficit would be overturned, you make profit in the end. But all of a sudden, it seemed that you changed your mind, probably because of the criticism you got. Who made the decision? Was it you?
So there were options, as you know, there were options that were given that where it could be made viable, and there were options of the closure. And given the council's financial position, the option to close was taken, and then to offer a lease was made. Yeah,
because it seemed very sudden. Who made that decision? Yeah, who made it? Was it in cabinet? Was it cabinet?
Yeah.
It was in cabinet. Patrick Harley.
I presume all decisions of final closure is an elected member's decision, so it's from cabinet.
With the Labour shadows there as well.
Yeah.
Because it seemed very sudden. It seemed like there was a chance it would be kept going. And then we saw in the newspapers, all of a sudden.
Financial position, we are having to make urgent, quick decisions. It's just because members are so aware of that one, that's become, but there have been other equally quick decisions made. But you know, the three group leaders do meet to look at as the councillor said, the three group leaders do meet to discuss budget decisions and changes, etc. as well. So yeah, it was a
There's a lot going on behind the scenes.
Sorry?
There's a lot going on behind the scenes.
So there's a basic process of officers will inform elected members of up-to-date cash flows, what's going on.
Yes.
The elected members.
And we recommend
will make a
options and
decision.
then members make decisions and those that don't.
It was just a bit of a surprise because it seemed to be under discussion. Then all of a sudden it was decided. Another question about the parking charges. Isn't it a danger it's going to be counterproductive? You might make some money, but will you not lose money perhaps in the long term if businesses are closing? Because Dudley's already suffering. If businesses are going to close because if the footfall reduces even further. Because it looks like the metro is a couple of years off at least. I think it's going to be longer than 1 year, bound to be.
I think
There's a lot of the problems.
If I could just say, the issue with town centres is complex.
I know.
So if you look at town centres nationally, a lot of the retail has closed. So if I look at where I live in Leamington, we've always had parking charge shops have closed and been replaced with food and beverage. The whole look and feel of town centres is changing.
That is to generalise, but I think Dudley is a special example. because I haven't lived in the area my entire life. It's been on this downward trajectory for most of it, but it seems to have really accelerated. And I find it difficult to see where the improvement's going to come from. Perhaps Portersfield might boost it for the metro, but it's going to be a long process, and we're not exactly helping that by these charges to deter shoppers even more, because it's not exactly an appealing place at the moment. Half a building site.
On street does keep traffic flowing because people, the nature of on street in a town centre should be that people come in, they park for a short period of time and then they leave and someone else takes their place and you have that footfall. At the moment in Dudley Town, people will park all day and not move. And that creates blockages and actually has a negative impact on trade as well.
And to see a possibility we may lose some footfall and businesses may close. The Star Chamber proposals, some mention about the 150, 170 ideas. Are we going to hear about that? Or is that going to just be,
that will be an improvement.
that will be for all members to look at, publicly accessible? It might just be going to cabinet and
Well,
we're given a condensed version.
No, so.
So we'll see every single.
So when a report goes to cabinet, it is publicly available on the website. So every member, not only every member, but every resident in the borough can see it.
Every proposal will be made available then.
The improvement
it will
will
be.
be made available.
Yeah, just want to make a point as well that the member officer relationships, the fact we don't seem to get along, I've made my feelings known to you before. I was just wondering, is this a general thing or is it, one political party complaining? Because I don't know what it's like for the Conservatives. I don't know whether they have the same experience that a lot of us on the Labour side do. I don't know what you think, how you feel. Is it something you've experienced? And, sort of no answers from the officers, struggling, you're fighting together.
Over the last few months, the offer of engagement back to us when we put things in is negligible, but that's something that's been raised many times.
Yeah, and
Sorry. But
That's all right. No, I mean, it's a good solution.
we've
So that's all, we don't know whether it's just
Yeah.
us being,
No,
but it's affecting all of us.
the engagement with officers does seem worse.
yeah, and we are working on what processes we can do to
So-
improve that.
Sorry.
Thank you. But one thing I would say is that, as savings are made, the pressure on staff is greater. So think that, people have taken on extra work. But having said that, as directors, we all accept that we do need to improve, whether we use technology more, whether there's more automated updating, etc. That is an important relationship. You are community representatives, so we do want to improve that and we do want to work better with you. I absolutely accept that responses could be better when we are working.
I think it's an important thing from our point of view. It seems like sometimes it hits our heads against a brick wall.
My aim is that we look at this in a positive action way. There is not in a defensive way, a positive action. At the end of the day, we are Team Dudley. We are there for the borough and its residents, and they need to work together. So the officers have a part to play, as do members, and we are all on the same team. So I want to address this in a positive action, but I absolutely accept that there are times when the response rate isn't what you would expect. We just need to help explain better and manage expectations, but also address some of the poor responses.
It's not a general thing with all officers. Some officers and some departments do get back pretty quickly and they do a really good job. It's just other places don't, and it's frustrating.
The important thing to remember is some teams get the volume of numbers of things they get are significantly bigger than others. I mean, and by hundreds of percent of that, some of the reactive frontline services, they will get hundreds of thousands of queries than say other departments will get, and it's much easier to respond. That's not me making an excuse, that's just a fact.
I think at some point that is kind of also a separate issue where I think the political leaders need to get in touch with the new acting chief exec and maybe sort that issue out rather than keep continually going over it in this setting. Jeff, did you have a question you wanted to?
Yeah, sorry, jumping back to very different topic. There were 100 approved people recruited. What has our net headcount been over that time?
So I couldn't give you the exact figure, but I can tell you that we've had a 6% reduction in our overall headcount over the last 12 years. Last 12 months. But we can get you the actual FTE equivalents of staffing numbers.
Yeah, I'm just curious to know what proportion of vacancies that arose have been filled.
Thank you.
That's that agenda item completed then. Thank you, Balvinda. So we'll move on to agenda item number 7, the government workstream deep dive, and that'll be by Ellen.
Chair, if it's okay, could I be excused?
You can make
Thank
this,
you very
thank you.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you very much.
Good.
Absolutely, thank you very much for looking back at me. Thank you.
I will just touch on, so Councillor Sean Kesey has commented online saying Crystal Leisure Centre should be replaced with a full-on modern commercial fun pool, in his opinion. What would D stand for, do we know?
Edwards.
Duncan Edwards and
How's that?
How's Owen do the other stuff. Thanks, Sean. We will now move on to Ellen.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. For those I haven't met either previously or at the Direct Marketplace that we just held, I'm Helen Martin, Director of Regeneration and Enterprise. That's part of the corporate management team. I am the lead director for the governance work stream. And I have been for a couple of months, but the work stream and the team that sits behind it have been beavering away on a lot of work even before I joined them in that capacity. With your approval, I don't intend to go through every bit of information that's in the slide. They're in your agenda pack. I think what would be more helpful for myself as that lead director is to have your input and some comments and feedback that we can then feed back into that work stream. You won't know it from your pack, but when they come to the slides, there's some questions in green. And with your permission, it'd be really helpful to have some debate and dialogue so that you can feed into that work stream and to help shape it. You will see as we go through, there is considerable overlap with some of the stuff that Balvinda's just talked about, the SIPA reports, the peer review. There's reference there to officer member relationships as well, and happy to explore a bit more what that might mean and how we can work collectively together to improve that. But just to be absolutely clear from the beginning of this, there's quite a lot of focus on members in this presentation, and the feedback and the comments related to member surveys and member training. But there's absolute understanding that this is a collective effort for officers and for members. If you've had a survey, officers have a survey. If you've got individual member training programs, there are officer training programs, and there are ones that overlap that are for both officers and members. So just from the beginning, I want to make it very clear, this doesn't have a binary focus, sort of a singular focus on members. It's absolutely about officers and their role and collectively how we work together, because there is a collective responsibility here to improve our governance as we move forward. So as Balvinda explained, this is part of our Fit for the Future programme, and it's been influenced and scoped by some of the external agency work that has happened in some of those reports that Balvinda took you through. And it's clearly shown that there's a need for this organisation to be underpinned by clear and transparent governance, and that the relationship between officers and members is obviously key to that success. Phase 1 has been mobilised. That was largely about steadying the ship and taking some early action, and there have been some achievements, and there's some slides in your deck that list some of the activity, some of the outputs and some of the next steps or issues that have arisen. And we're starting to move into the phase 2, the future phase of it, which is really about trying to transform how this organisation works and try and embed some of those changes. And what we're looking to achieve is a more longer lasting change, and a change in our culture as an organisation and our behaviour as an organisation. And as I said before, this is a collective goal of officers and members. I'm not going to dwell on this slide. This lists a lot of the documents and the pieces of work that Balvinda has already taken you through in a bit more detail, but it shows the fact that we've got a number of external agencies looking at our organisation. All of them in their own way have come to similar conclusions about the need to look at our governance as we make decisions and move forward. And specifically the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny, who's commissioned by us to look at our overall governance arrangements, has pulled out 2 clear issues that are on that slide in front of you. And they're saying there's things like we need to be really clear as we move forward on the roles and responsibilities of individuals and key groups in that councils. So that might be across the management team, the roles of individual officers within that. That might be the difference between the role of the officer and the role of the member, and accepting that there is a bit in the middle where our roles overlap to deliver for the residents of the borough. And then the second point, they've said when we're making decisions, it's really important we have those formal processes in place and making sure we don't vary from the Constitution. So the Constitution sets out how we make level we make decisions, who has the authority to make those decisions, and it is really important we're very consistent and very transparent in our decision making. And they have made recommendations that we review that Constitution, but at the moment that's a little bit on pause because they say there's some more urgent things that we need to do, but ultimately we will need to review the Constitution as we go forward. The next few slides list the things that have happened to date. So some of those are quite practical actions, such as being member training and development programme that has started and will continue. I guess the one point that I would maybe draw out of that, and my one plea to you, and for your information, I am meeting with all of the leaders. I have met with Pat Ficali and I have met with Ryan Priest. I've yet to meet with Councillor Lowe. I have offered to meet them at regular intervals to update on the work stream and to ask for their support to encourage and enable members to attend training. That said, we've just had the Directorate Marketplace and totally accept that that took place in the working hours, and we have members that don't work. So we are trying to look at how we deliver training, different ways of doing it, different times of doing it, and we totally accept one size is not going to fit all because people have different commitments and different things in their life that mean they can't always turn up 9 to 5 or can't always come in the evening. And we also accept that you are very busy people with a lot of meetings. If there is something we can do differently to make it easier for you to engage in these processes and engage in this training, please tell us. What we want to get to is a point. So you'll see from that side, 38% of members attended that training. Now, some of that training is mandatory, that if you want to sit, for example, in planning committee, you have to have the training before you can go, because it's a statutory decision-making body. If people don't go to that training, they can't sit on the committee, and it starts to affect the ability of committees to attend or members' skills and confidence in making sometimes what are quite difficult decisions, particularly if they're publicly difficult decisions as well. So, we would like to see, as an officer in the governance workstream level, that percentage go up. There are obviously barriers to people being able to engage. So your feedback is really welcome, whether it's the way we do it, the when we do it, or the what we are doing. And we are trying to roll out an expanded programme of training. So you'll see in the second line that 92% of the potential sessions are new sessions. Trying to make them more engaging and of topics that are helpful to you. I know from the discussions I've had with two of the leaders that there's probably still a bit of a gap in how we support new councillors when they come into the council and when they first have their induction, and how we help them to be able to do their job and to serve residents. Again, any feedback from your own experiences would be very welcome. We can shape the programmes and take that forward. The bottom line I'll come back to with a couple of graphs. So we recently undertook a member survey. We've also undertaken an officer survey, but the results in your pack relate to specifically to the member survey. 31% response rate. We'd obviously really encourage members to engage more and to get a higher response rate. What I will say is that's actually quite a good response rate compared to a lot of surveys, general surveys we do about plans, projects, activity in the council. 31% we would be pleased with. But it would be great to have a higher percentage, because it's not even a third of our members. So we don't know if those responses are representative of what members are really thinking. We just know that's what the ones that responded told us. So anything we can collectively do to drive up that engagement, again, would be really helpful. We made some structural changes in terms of some of our meetings, and I've got a slide coming up on that in a second, which will ask a few questions from some of your feedback. We've also done, for example, a review in democratic services and tried to create capacity for Karen and the rest of her colleagues to be able to support the governance work and spend time and effort where you'll get the biggest impact and the greatest result. So this is the first slide where, if you're in agreement, Chair, I might pause and ask for a bit of discussion, a bit of debate. But what's on the slide, and I will read it because I appreciate you probably can't see it very easily from there. I can't see it from here, but I've fortunately got it in front of me. So the Centre for Good Governance has defined what they consider to be good governance. And you can, if you Google it, you'll find many interpretations, but they all roughly revolve around similar themes and similar descriptions. And what they've said is governance and scrutiny are essential for the successful working of any organisation. Now more than ever, trusted decisions are needed, and we believe that decisions are better made when they are open to challenge and involve others, whether that's democratically elected representatives, those affected by decisions, or other key stakeholders. At the heart of better governance and scrutiny are the right behaviours and culture. Our work champions these relational aspects and designs structures to support them, leading to more effective decision making and improved outcomes for organisations and people. So my first question, and I welcome some discussion on, is whether or not that description of governance is one that you recognise. Is it something you support? Do you think there's something that is missing there that also forms part of good governance? But perhaps more importantly, is that what you feel is happening in this organisation, or is there change that is required for us to be able to say that's how we operate and that's how our governance is in this organisation? And if the answer to that question is no, then what is it do you think that we need to change, or what would good look like for you as the elected members in this organisation moving forward?
I can, through you, Chair. I mean, what's your analysis of that description and how things are happening?
So I'm quite happy with the description in terms of the fact of, is that a decent definition of what good governance was look like? But I think the question is that what is happening in this organisation?
As an officer.
I'd have to say not fully. And I think that's reflected in the responses that have come back from some of those external organisations. And I think my experience of members that I've spoken to and things that I'm just aware of from being in the council, and I've been here 20 years, so I've been quite a long time working here, is that perhaps there isn't. I think the key words that are in there is it talks about the right behaviours and the right culture, and it talks about trusted decisions. And my feedback from talking to members and from officers is that I think there is not the level of understanding perhaps there was some years ago of the role of an officer versus the role of a member and the pressures that members experience. I think officers are not exposed to the work of councillors and to councillors in the way they perhaps were. I think they don't always necessarily have a full appreciation of the role that you do. Some councillors may not understand the jobs and the roles that we as officers have to do and what we can and can't do. And therefore, it sometimes does lead to not the full communication there perhaps was, not the full understanding there was, and therefore I think it diminishes the level of trust. I think if we could get to the point that you knew what I did as a job and understood what I could and couldn't do, and then when I can't solve the member issue, we have a conversation about what is achievable and how we could maybe get to the point you need to get to, but it might be a different route. I think we just don't have conversations in the way that we need to. I think officers physically don't see or aren't out in the communities perhaps in the way that they used to. So I would say, no, we don't do that fully, because I think there is a piece of work to do on officers and members working together. Now, I know there was the comment earlier about where is that lack of relationship between officers and members. I don't think, my personal opinion is it's not necessarily, although there may be individual exceptions to this, about an officer or about a member. I think it's about the way we collectively work together in a positive way to deliver the services for the residents. I think we are physically disconnected, and I think we don't spend a lot of time working together. So if I go back some way, because planning is in part of my directorate and that's my professional background, we spent a lot of time in planning committee, we invited them in, we encouraged them to come and see the life of a planning application from the start when it hits our office to when it leaves out, and understand the things that we have to do. And it was hugely beneficial for officers who perhaps met planning committee but wouldn't normally meet them, and for members of that committee to understand what we did. So I think some of the issues that we need to do is having some of that understanding and just talking about what we do a lot better, and building those relationships which will build trust. If you understand why I can't do something, it's not in a process, it's maybe not legally the way we do it in some of our regulatory systems, but I understand what it is you're trying to achieve, we can have a conversation about how we maybe get there. And I think we've stopped having some of those conversations, is my feeling from some of the feedback that I get. So I think we can get there, but I don't think we're there at the moment. And that's my officer perspective. You as members may have a different view on that world.
Yeah, I think it's down to education, to be honest. I mean, we need to know what you can and can't do for us, what we need to achieve, and where we get the common ground from, working as a team.
Yeah.
And I think there's maybe a bit of a misconception there where thinks we're either side about that to get each other or trip each other up. And them barriers have got to be broken down. We're in this together. And you know, if we stand off and you stand off, it's just going to create a no man's land in the middle where nobody benefits, not everybody. I feel, but I mean,
Yeah.
I'm open to the courses, doing more, but as we were saying earlier, we have found it hard working, being out of the country for work,
Yeah.
to attend the courses. And as a new councillor, I feel I'm missing some gaps myself. And obviously know what you guys do and how you can help me. There's lots of ideas, lots of things we see on a day-to-day basis, but we potentially could do with a bit of help from yourselves or the senior officers.
Sure.
How to do it, how best to approach it. Because it may be a good idea that we bring to the table, or you may say, no, we've tried that before, it didn't work because of X, Y, and Z, or we can't do it because of X, Y, and Z. And that'd help us as well. And then we move on and use that time more constructively elsewhere
Mhm.
where it's needed, I suppose, instead of wasting time.
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing that Belinda was getting on with pals and stuff. I think we're missing things and missing timings because we're too busy stuck in a loggerheads or misinformation and not being able to move forward or move on to get the real concerns or other concerns. Effective time management, really. That's sort of fair assessment.
I think one of the issues which obviously can't be solved is the shift patterns. We all work on different shift patterns. Officers, although you're obviously here today, so you're working late, but officers, will be daytime workers and councillors work and nighttime workers, the time during
finish work, yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's, yeah.
Picking up on that, I just feel there's a misconception sometimes that let's put a schedule, a date, 2:00 in an afternoon, and everybody can attend it. Councillors, officers, whatever, but not everybody can. It's a frequent bugbear of mine, and members who know me will on our WhatsApp groups. Yet another event scheduled 3:00. What about the members who work till 5? Another meeting scheduled at 4:00. Again, it's 5:00. I can't always get here for 5:00, but I can get here for 6. But there's no flexibility sometimes. We've put this in the diary and we expect, or it's that conception that everybody can attend at 2:00 on a Monday afternoon. Not everybody can.
So for instance, there was an event today that run from 1 till 4, was it? 2 till 5.
There's no way I can get to that. And you have to yet again, an apology. So it looks like I'm not interested.
We are.
But I can't get there.
Yeah.
And there's no way. If I got to keep asking my employer, can I go early? Can I leave? Can I have time off? I know what's going to come back. It's bad enough now trying to do it as it is. But it's just that conception, like today, 1 till 5 or whatever time it was. But again, I've had to put an apology in. Our WhatsApp group, frequently, yes, another meeting. What about us who work? It's that conception that everybody can. We can't always.
And I do feel sorry for you guys because you're officers and you work, your hours are set. You don't want to work till 7 or 8 o'clock at night. You want to get home to your families and have your dinner. I understand that. And obviously for us, weekends and evenings are more free for us than on the week. But
then wouldn't it be better to have more people or more councillors attend at 6 o'clock than you sit there for 2 hours with nobody come? Or you have one person come or 2 people come, I don't know. I get the fact that you've got to do it in the day, no problem with that. But maybe we can maybe we'll do that one at 2 o'clock. Can we put one on for an hour at 6 and condense it?
Yep.
Or half an hour? I don't know, just a bit of flexibility, but there doesn't seem to be any flexibility at the moment.
We can certainly look at that. And yes, officers are here for 9 to 5, but they also have flexible working. So we totally accept that not everybody can come in. Actually suits some of our officers to start later and finish later on occasion. I think the issue is having notice, and then you can plan around it, can't you? And officers can plan around it. So none of these things are generally sprung on you. They're a programme that we can put in. So I don't see that that's necessarily
to be on the programme, so going forward for a bit.
So a bit more of a lead.
More of a lead, yeah. And
Okay.
work things around, swap shifts, move stuff around. But I'm just obviously, sorry, Chair.
Carry on, mate.
Obviously, I've come from an education background as well. I was a college lecturer for a number of years, and a lot of things went online in the pandemic where they had online tutoring. Couldn't we get something like that where, I mean, like we all have dinner hours, we could come on the dinner hours and have an online tutor with a one-to-one with an officer or something. You know, and whoever can attend, could go on with the cameras and have that one-to-one and get the information on a one-to-one basis through, obviously, with the cameras. Because technology is a beautiful thing now, and Teams has been like a godsend.
Yes.
Teams, you see, you know, I don't have to commute in so much now, but
That goes back to flexibility, doesn't it? And
Yeah.
maybe we could just look at some of that. I mean,
Absolutely. I think if there's an appetite that we can support that. Obviously, that's what we had to do during the pandemic and stuff. Generally, you find engagement is a bit better when it's face to face, and a lot of the feedback we have had is that people generally prefer to have that kind of delivery. However, if you accept that not everybody can make that, then there might be a way of doing both in separate events or allowing people to dial in, but the majority of people are face to face. We've started to record a number of things so that people can access it at their own leisure. Then you don't necessarily have the question and answer ability, but I think there's also ways that we can take individual members if they're unable to attend through different plans. So I'm happy to look at all of that, whatever works best. I think the only time it's ever a frustration is when we don't get the engagement. So we will put on whatever we need to put on at whatever time we need to put it, as long as we can encourage enough people to take part in it and to come along. But for that to happen, it has to be the right time for you, and it has to be a value to you to turn up. If you're going to give your time, you need to know you're going to get something out of it, don't you? So inputting into the what is also really important. So your comment already about support for new members and stuff is really helpful, because I suspect if we put the stuff on like that, then people are going to turn up. So we can sort of co-produce some of that programme to make sure that it's delivering what you need at a time you need it. Then the how we can work through, and we'll definitely be able to get officers to resource it.
and even if we've got a slot where you could dial in and ask and get what you needed. I mean, we're going to have a dial-in slot from, I don't know, on a Friday at...
Like a drop-in session.
Yeah, like a dial-in session, like a dial-in session between 1 and 3, and then if you direct them, these people are all here, these are the diaries. We've got, I don't know, 4 officers 1 week, 4 officers next week, and you can dial in and obviously face to face, put your cameras on. If you're not going to put the cameras on, then that's not a face to face. That's pointless. And have a chat, have a 2-way conversation there. You know, slots or something. I just no ideas.
That's really important.
Yeah, so I think it's just worth looking into how we can ensure that all members are engaged and can get there.
That's the barriers.
I mean, for me, the other part with the governance, and obviously that makes sense, is the understanding, and Pete mentioned this earlier, I think Showcat did as well, of the structure within the council, who's actually in charge. I mean, I find it weird when members are saying, I've requested this information, officers haven't brought it back. I think for good governance, there needs to be understanding of the hierarchy of the council and who's running, who's in charge, to create a good relationship with people. You don't want somebody, we're being recorded, you don't want somebody on a power trip, for instance, either side, whether it's an elected member or whether it's an officer. But each side needs to know, actually, elected members are essentially in charge of the council. And I just think that needs to be kind of reiterated to people, to be like, actually, let's ensure that elected councillors are getting everything they need, because that would cut a lot of flack and the people coming and moaning. It's easier just to go, there you go, you probably won't hear back from them, you know what I mean? It's get it done. So I think the structure of it is part and parcel of creating good.
Going to the right, as you say, going to the right person.
Yeah.
I mean, you could be asking somebody for information, they're going, well, I've no idea what this is.
Yeah.
Or where to send it.
Yeah.
If you know, obviously through the education and 2-way, if you know where you got to go, you can get things resolved a lot quicker. Therefore, stop wasting the time that we're wasting by, I've sent it, but I'm not going to get a response, as you say. But if you go to the right person, and if you don't get any response from them, you know who to go to, or know where to go to get the right answer. Or there could be 2 people sharing the pot. You're going to get your answers, and it's not going to be this, them and us. Oh, well, I didn't get any response, I'm not going to bother again, I'm just going to moan about it.
So some of the other feedback we've had is that, so particularly the stuff coming through Council Connect, because it is obviously better for us organisationally if everything comes in through one route. One, it's logged, we can monitor it, and also it's not stuck in one person, might be 6 inbox, for example. But the feedback was that then sometimes you're having to come back and chase, and there may be a gap for very good reason while things are happening in the background, but that feedback loop is not necessarily working. So you don't get a holding response, you don't get an update. So there'll be a gap before you get an answer. where you're not getting anything in between. So is that your experience as well, that sometimes you've got?
I've got to speak for my own person. As a new councillor, responses I've had have been very good. And I've been kept in the loop about everything that's going on. And I've actually spoke to officers outside of the casework reporting. So I've had emails directly from them, and I've spoken to them directly. I've got numbers now, so I know who I'm talking to now. I'm starting to get some traction with some of the people I know. But for me, the big, I know everybody's probably going to is the pothole thing really. That's the pothole road covering, because obviously there's a small amount of resource and everybody's got problems with the roads. And obviously it's getting the response, and and obviously you've got the residents continue, what's happening with this, what's happening with it? And obviously a big thing is the potholes, but obviously we understand it's A roads and main roads are the big problem, and they've worked their way down.
Yeah.
But that could do with a bit more. So at least we know where we are with it.
Yeah, I mean, and to back that up, sorry, Jace, just, I've had no problems either through councillor contact, everything I'm asking. So in reality, I've had responses and I've replied to responses. Is there within the councillor contact sheet that we get sent back to us? Is it listed there who the person in charge of a certain department it would be? So if it would be able to probably, if that contact sheet come back and it said Helen Martin is in charge of this department, cabinet member Damien Caulfield is highways, and you know what I mean. So you've got that information straight away. So you thought, well, right, that hasn't been dealt with. I know the appropriate person to go straight to them.
Yeah, you came to contact.
No, but I don't think so is the answer.
But that would be
excellent. Really, really.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
You might have the danger, everybody goes straight to the people. They get a-
well, you might well do, but that would be a secondary point, because your first contact should always be councillor contact.
It's even easier than that, then, isn't it? You just have you have the department in the hierarchy and have the numbers of the.
It's always
what you wait.
straight to the top. I'm good.
Again, that's education for us, then, isn't it?
And I think I can totally understand the desire for that, and I'm sure there's something that can be done. But as you rightly said, councillor, what then happens? So if I take in my world, if he doesn't respond to build control planning, whatever it is, and they know that I'm there, I will get the email. And then what happens is I have to be free to see the email, or somebody has to check my inbox. Then they go back to the officer that probably should have been asked in the first place, or more than likely to the head of service, who then sends it to the officer, who then answers and comes back like this. So actually, exactly. So it's and delay to the customer. Whereas if it went back straight to the point of the person who's got the answer, it would be quicker. So I think there's no reason why we couldn't give that level of understanding to say, this is what this directorate does, this is the director, meet the director, this is what we do. And then also be able to share with you, so if you take the pothole examples, if there's a schedule and you know that road is not on the schedule till X month, just knowing that helps you manage at the point of responding to doing. So I think what there is probably a piece of work, a bit like what we did today, but outside of the working day, to maybe, and particularly when we have a cohort of new councillors that come in after election, have that opportunity to have virtually one-to-ones with the directors and maybe the heads of service, say, this is what we do, this is the issues, and then you build the understanding and you build the relationship, and some of that can be managed from the point that you get the inquiry. And we can help work with you to sometimes give you the information so that you might even be able to answer it there and then. Not always, but if you're getting repeat things all the time, then that's about information sharing and FAQs of things we know are coming up. So for example, again, in my world, we're about to go out on a local plan consultation. We tend to go to the group meetings to try and provide you for information when that happens. But if we know that's going to happen and we know what you're going to get asked, we might as well say this, and this. And if you can't answer that, this is where you come and allow you to be able to have some of that information at the fingertips. But that's about building conversations and having that dialogue, isn't it?
Jason, did you have a question?
Yeah, again, I got elected in May. I think councillor contact's fantastic. I really do think it's a very, very good system. And I don't mind emailing, but at some point I like a personal touch. And to hear that you've got telephone numbers for officers, I would dearly love that, or I haven't. And I would like a situation, whenever I'm dealing with an officer, on my email, I put my telephone number. And I think so much could be saved. It's at some point we actually spoke to each other.
Is there a directory?
So if you have access to Outlook, do you?
But in terms of, so I'll get through that all through Teams. But is the one, because has every officer got a mobile that is attached to their work, or is it just landline?
Not everybody has a mobile. But
And is
every
that
officer will
something
have
we
a
could look at?
line number, and if you, presumably you have like the Outlook calendar and the Outlook directory. So if you go on this, if you click on me in that Outlook directory, you'll be able to find out the organisational hierarchy, who I report to, who reports to me, and all of those telephone numbers and those email addresses.
Landline, yeah, just.
Landlines,
You get the-
there's no such thing anymore because it all comes through. So if you rang my office number,
It'll come.
it will ring me on here. So I happen to have a work mobile as well, but most people don't. But even that is diverted, meaning that you can always get through to an officer through Teams, and it will leave them a message, and or you can message them through Teams and they will pick that up during their.
So, I mean, this comes into the running of the council because I think 3-4 of us weren't aware of that aspect of clicking into something to get to something else. So that
Yeah.
becomes member
Yeah.
training again, but
What I will say is obviously for normal inquiries, councillor contact is
Yeah.
still your way to come in.
yeah.
But there is information there. If you know who it is you need to speak to and you're just trying to get hold of them, all of that contact details is in the system.
But there is the danger if your number gets out into, to all the members, it will eventually get to the public domain.
You just
And
flood it.
Already there.
it's already there, yeah.
Already there, yeah.
Same with the housing managers, I mean, their numbers get out to the public, absolutely. That's them.
Yeah.
And then you
that's the
spend the
day.
entire day
You-
answering
you're drowned
calls,
in.
yeah.
Shall we move on? Of course. Sorry.
So I just had a very quick question. Is it acceptable to contact officers via Teams, just Teams chat? Not, obviously things should go through the council plus. Do you use Teams chat?
I think the answer probably varies on which officer and who likes IT and so on and so forth.
So it might be.
We have contact from, for example, Paul Bradley is my cabinet member, so he sometimes contacts me through Teams. I think it's helpful to know the individual because some people check it more consistently than others. But yes, I have contact through that. What I will say is your Teams chat is not monitored by anybody else. So, for example, I work with two fabulous ladies who do PA. I've got 2 part-time PA people who support me, manage my inbox, support the councillors and do stuff. They can see my inbox, they can go in at any time, and if I'm not around, they will get things moving and they will get it action, they'll get an answer. Sometimes it's even dealt with before I get to it, if it's gone to the relevant head of service. If you come in through Teams, nobody else can see that. So my advice would be that if you actually want something actioned, you probably put it into an inbox that might be visible to other people, because nobody else is going to pick up in Teams if that person is away for any length of time, sick, for example.
If I can, Chair, I've got a couple of things. First one is around Council Connect. When I first came council, 3 or 4 years ago, I actually took a tour around Council Connect and I found it very interesting. Maybe something like that could be included in the induction, because I know we go around this building. Maybe if we could swing into Council Connect, it would be helpful to see the system that the girls run there and the officers run there, and what happens to that email when we actually fire it off. That something to be looked at. The second part is around Council Connect. When we fire the emails, is it still, am I right in thinking there's 10 days grace before we get an answer, or up to 10 days? And can that be shortened in any way? Because 10 days is quite a long time.
Yeah, so I'll have to check, but I think it is still 10
I think
days.
it's 10 days.
Say for that is, and I know some of my other fellow directors will say, less than 10 days will be fine in some service areas, in others it will be difficult.
But sometimes you don't get a response in 10 days. Sometimes.
Understood.
So maybe if is there any way then, once we fired it on, rather than us sending it down to Council Connect as a follow-up, an automatic follow-up could be fired over, still no response, councillor needs a reply or something along that line. And we get an automated to say that's been done or something. At least
A bit more to be able to nudge things.
at least then we know it's not just in the ether forgotten and we'll get to it.
Yeah.
Even though we've gone over the 10 days. Because I've just looked at mine and I've got loads of red,
Okay,
which means I'm overdue. So that means now I've got to chase those up, whereas they're already logged, and that means I'm going to be creating yet another email going in where it could be done automatically. If there must be a facility there, because we get an automatic email to say that we've logged it. So surely there should be some way of being able to say, yeah, 10 days, there's no response. Let's fire it over and just give them a nudge.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's something that might could
See that back
be looked at.
in the detail, sorry,
Yeah, no.
there are nudges and there are, because I know that in my in-service areas, you haven't responded, can you please respond? But whether that's automated or that's people monitoring responses, I'm not quite sure.
Take a gamble, it's probably us throwing an email to Council Connect again,
Triggering there,
follow up.
right, okay. Happy
I don't know.
to see that up with the,
It might be something then it just saves us sending yet another email in and clogging the system up again. Because, you know, you've got 72 councillors there. If we all log on the same day and we've all got red or we've got overdue and we all fire emails, that's 72.
yeah, sure.
It could be even more, it could be less. But it's just, you know, it's something, I don't know, something might be looked at.
Thank you, yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And apologies, there are a few more slides and
That's
quite a few
okay.
more questions, but you may have more or less to say on some of them. This slide relates to some of the sort of structural changes that have taken place in some of the meetings that we have that allow us to have good governance. So as a corporate management team, we've changed that meeting in terms of membership frequency. It's split into different sections depending on what the topics are. And what was informal cabinet is now 2 different meetings that are meet on rotation. There's cabinet strategy group. One is a more informal discussion that isn't minuted. The other one is more of a policy steer and consultation on cabinet papers that is formally minuted. So I guess it was just a question, and you may not have had sight of that. You may not have had any experience of it, but it was just to say, have you felt any changes from these new ways that officers and senior leadership team are starting to work? And is there anything else we could be doing that maximises the benefit in terms of that flow of work and decisions coming out through to councillors and formal governance processes?
So for me personally, and I know a few of the councillors round the table are new councillors, so we wouldn't have they would be working before.
Yeah.
We've all been in the same boat, obviously, we've been very busy with election and, you know, so again, we've understood the processes properly. The more experienced ones like Showcat might want to make a comment on that if you've noticed any changes.
I think aware of the different ways of working, but in terms of seeing, you know, have you felt the change? It's really difficult to say.
Yeah.
Because you'd go to a cabinet meeting and you get a paper. I mean, how has any of that impacted or affected that is really difficult to. So maybe it's a difficult question.
And maybe it hasn't had enough time to bed through.
But even then, I mean, who, you know, in terms of the corporate management team, you've got all of those stuff. Each individual councillor wouldn't know what goes on. I mean, unless you communicate and tell them, well, corporate management team met today and discussed A, B, and C. No one would know what the corporate management team is doing. Similarly with cabinet strategy group. I mean, that would be just for the cabinet. I mean, no one else would know what's going on. So, and the cabinet policy group, no one would know what's going on in the policy group. So, yeah, I mean, those have happened, but in terms of communicating out from those, you know, there's a gap.
Thank you. Okay, I appreciate for some of you it's difficult to answer that one, so I'll move on. But you might have remembered in one of the earlier slides we talked about the member survey that we had 31% on. It provided insight about a number of topics, the training and development programme, some of your experiences of working with officers and members, some perceptions and understanding critically of our financial situation and the savings that we have to make. And what we've done is put a couple of slides which you'll see in your pack, and apologies in your papers, they perhaps don't replicate very well in black and white. But this was an example of one of the more positive, really good responses that shows something's obviously working in our communication and our member development training, etc. That shows that members have a pretty good, or they feel they have a pretty good understanding of the financial situation, and that they feel able to support the council in making difficult decisions. So clearly that's somewhere where we must be as officers and members working together in a positive way. You feel you're getting the information and you're able to therefore make those difficult decisions and help support the council through that. So my question to you is, one, does that resonate with you, or would you disagree with that? And how can officers better support you as elected members in making those difficult decisions? So as Balvinda said in her presentation, we've got some difficult decisions coming down the line. What can we do to help you feel informed and able to make those decisions going forward?
Yes, so I think it's obviously the easiest answer is ensuring all elected members are fully up to date with information. Obviously, we understand the running of the council and cabinet and shadow cabinets are more, getting told a lot more than us at the bottom, and it's usually left to our own parties to feed it back down to us, our own groups. But just ensuring, I would have thought that the 72 councillors are getting all the information from the relevant officers and the running of, depending on what the financial situation is and what we're talking about, just making sure we've all got the information. That's right.
I mean, I've had the email about the cabinet meetings. I've been looking through that myself, trying to pick out things that are potentially interesting. So that's been quite good. But obviously the impacts of the decisions and the impacts of not taking the decisions, that would help. So it's background behind the decisions and what's causing the drive to make these decisions and these choices would help us, I suppose. Instead of just yes or no.
We all are trying to use the select committee and scrutiny process and run into some of those decisions also to allow that review and check and challenge. So earlier in the week, I was actually there talking about the halls, and Louisa was there presenting about leisure centres. So we are also trying to use the select committee and scrutiny process to allow some of that before they go to cabinet, but I appreciate not all members sit on those committees.
Yeah.
Okay. And I will say as well, I realise this is a bit of a whistle stop tour. If you've got thoughts or issues afterwards and you want to let me know, then happy to have a conversation or drop me an email. And so often afterwards you think, I wish I'd said that, or I've had another thought.
Again,
Feel free.
It's another thing from the training that you think, a follow-up session.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's something you thought about, I wish I'd have asked that. Or what if I do this and do that? Funding for this or funding for that.
So this is just picked out as an example of where there's perhaps a less positive response to the outcomes of the member survey. So we asked some questions about officer member working relationships in the council, are they strong? So remember, this was a question to members about member officer relationships, and a question to members about whether they felt positive about the work that officers were doing at the council. And we pull this out because you'll see the one on the left-hand side, if you add together strongly disagreed and disagreed, there's nearly 60% of members, admittedly only the 31% that responded, but 60% of those that did don't agree that there's a good working relationship between officers and members. So, Councillor Ali, for example, your comment at the beginning about what does that mean and who's those individuals, of the 31% that responded, there's a majority that don't think there's a strong working relationship there. So we might say the other 69% think it's brilliant, but they didn't respond. So I think that's a bit of an assumption to assume that's the case. And it's about how we can collectively work together to turn the dial on that, really. And again, there was a good over a third of members who responded did not feel positive about the work that officers are doing. So it's how we can collectively work together to unpick the why don't they feel positive. Is it they're not getting a response or they're having to chase responses? Is it that they don't understand because we haven't shared with them what we can and what we can't do and how we do certain things, so that you're getting frustrated when better communication may break down some of those barriers? So the question and the debate that would be helpful now or at another time would be how we as officers and members can collectively work together to make sure that you as members representing communities feel more positive about the work that we're doing and about that relationship. And I realise that's probably a whole session in its own right, maybe, but this is ultimately the bit about the officer-member relationship that we're trying to unpick. Whatever the issue is and wherever it lies, that is the response that came back from the survey. So it's obviously something that is not quite gelling and not quite working here. And that might be a communication thing, that might be just getting to understand each other's roles, responsibilities, issues and pressures, or it might be something more fundamental. But you have an open door from the team that is working on this governance work stream to work through that together and say, what is driving that response and what can we do to improve it and make it better?
I just think the things that we've talked about already, breaking down the barriers and talking to communicate, I think that's go a long way. It's not going to happen overnight.
No.
Work in progress. It's not going, not talking 3 months, potentially 6 months, but obviously it's something we need to start working on.
Okay.
Some of the frustration could be through the lack of responses when elected members raise an issue or query. And then I think it should boil down to that face-to-face, officers reaching out, trying to meet with the elected members to understand each other's perspectives. And as I think you said earlier on,
Yeah.
is sometimes you're able to then work through an issue, obviously still staying within the law and legislation and regulations and whatever. But I think, if you're able to sit around the table, understand each other's perspectives, then you might be able to do things, achieve something.
You know, I agree with that. I feel like you build relationships face to face. I think more face to face interactions probably with officers and members could be beneficial to building the relation. I know everybody's like work-life balance and so on and so forth clashes, but if there's more opportunity to potentially meet with an officer on an issue and you can build that relationship, then maybe I feel like that's where we could potentially see it go.
Sorry, apologies. I'll move on slide. There we go. This is the last one. I've just summarised here and some of the stuff that we need to do. And so there will be priorities that come out of some of those formal documents and reports, such as CIPRA and the peer review, which will start to form some of this goes to actions of the work stream as well. But ultimately, we need to co-produce this together for it to be something we all buy into and actually makes a lasting change. So I think we might have pretty much covered the questions that are at the bottom already, but it was it's been hugely helpful to listen to your comments, some of which were expected, some of which have expanded and taken it into a slightly different area. I will feed back to the workstream group. We will make sure that that is fed into our action plan and we'll start to put some of those things into place. And as I said a few minutes ago, if you think of anything else, please do. If you want us to come back to talk about these various stages, more than happy to do so. If when you go back to your colleagues in your groups, you get other feedback and other comments, again, please feel free to feed them through to us. So it really is an open door to try and turn the dial on some of this issue, because ultimately, as I'm sure you agree, we all actually get out of bed in the morning to come and do the same thing for the residents of the borough. So we're collectively trying to achieve the same outcome. So really, we ought to be able to move together forward to do that. And there is an absolute willingness on the officer team generally, but also in this work stream to work with you to do that in a positive way. Thank you.
I think we've answered them questions all the way through.
Yeah.
One good thing is to meet officers in person. I mean, speaking to you guys is completely different to having Teams meetings. Officers that you ever see. I won't name names, but some officers you only ever see on a screen.
Yeah.
I mean, they could even be living in another country for a week. You stand there. You know,
You sent me to, I was going to request that, we go through all these scrutinies. We're expected to be there. And we are marked. If we don't, even if we do that, we are marked as absent. Surely the officers should be there. If we've got questions for an officer, it would be much better in person than on that thing. In my view, it's only reason.
Misunderstandings, you build a relationship. And this move away from meeting in person, I'll find a problem. So I never meet them, never speak to them, see as you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, understood.
I mean, obviously, to caveat, there will always be times when it's virtually impossible for whatever reasons, whether they're personal or professional. But I think, in general, it would be a good.
I think though, if you've built that relationship and you've built that trust, occasionally being on Teams is not the issue, is it? I think it's when it's
And it goes back to that sort of them and us thing, divide. We're here, you're not.
Yeah.
All right, yes, you're there, but you're not with us in the room with us. We can't have a stand-up row, really. I can't have a row with you. You can't have a row with me. We can't on that thing like we can there. Whereas if we got an officer here, we can, it's better face to face, as you all say.
I think there's fewer arguments this one. I think you get along better. I mean, if it's remote, you tend to, it's misunderstanding.
You get to know us. We also then get to know the officers.
Yeah.
And it goes back to that.
And the truth is, we all know how humans work.
Yeah.
The quick hello and a nice goodbye, it builds a relationship that creates
Absolutely.
a feeling of
That's sometimes a bit.
we can get on with them rather than.
That's sometimes a bit sterile when you've got a scrutiny and you've got 4 officers all on the screen, and they're not here in the room. It's very just comes across as a bit one-sided. Want for a better term.
It's dystopian.
Yeah.
And I think it becomes very functional and sticks to the agenda. So you don't get what I would call your sort of coffee machine or water cooler conversations at the beginning or the end. It's very much about.
I don't think you get this.
Don't get the engagement.
Okay.
I view.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. That's
Perfect.
been really helpful. Thank you.
Just mindful of the time for everyone. So if we move on to the next agenda item, which is Fit for the Future Council Sustainability Committee Progress Tracker and Future Business, which I think Karen's just going to touch on.
Yeah, Chair, so this is just a standard agenda item, just outlining the actions that were raised at the last meeting, which have all been actioned, and just future business of the committee. So it's just for noting any comments by members.
Everybody happy with that? Then the final agenda item is to consider any questions from members to the chair where 2 clear days notice have been given to the monitoring officer
None,
and
Chair.
there are no
No.
questions. And after a great meeting, which has actually been very, very good and informative and good conversation, I'll call that meeting to a close.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. No, it's absolutely fine.
Oh, yeah, go on, go on.
Yeah, that's where it is. Yeah, I was at Wolverhampton yesterday.